What happened, do you think, with Jaquiski Tartt?
Made a bad impression right from the start, I guess. Maybe there were mixed feelings about acquiring him in the first place. Although I can't imagine anyone's going to go against Howie if because Howie obviously felt strongly about acquiring him. I mean, he's not the only one. I mean, the safety they got from Seattle and quickly turned around and traded him. I mean, I thought that guy was a natural fit, a guy that could play nickel and safety for them.
With John McMullen, I'm Jody McDonald. Thanks for streaming in here on Birds 365 on Cut Down Tuesday. Yes, sometime before 4 o'clock, the Eagles will be at 53 men, as will every other team in the National Football League, which means a lot of guys are going to be out of jobs, and we actually feel bad for it, except for maybe Jaquiski Tartt. No, that's a joke. Being a little overly sensitive today, but I do that from time to time. Never the case when we bring our buddy Paul Domowitch on. How many years you've been doing this? How many years you had to deal with cut down days and watching guys walk off and know that their football career could be over and done with?
Quite a few. Kicking 40.
Damn, that's a lot of guys who you've seen walk out that door. Yeah. Speaking of all that time, Domo, you go back to the days of 6 preseason games, which was, wow, that was a rough go of it. But how much has preseason football changed in sort of that span to the past? I mean, it is utterly meaningless at this point. What are we doing? Is there any value in these games at this point?
No, I mean, the only reason they still have them is because the owners want the gate. There's been sentiment, especially when they went to 17 games, to eliminate all preseason games and just go to these joint practices. Have teams have multiple joint practices, which are safer, probably definitely more useful because your starters are getting reps. But at some point here, we're going to go to 18 games regular season. They'll go down to 2 preseason games. But that's probably the minimum because the owners are always going to want to maximize as many gate receipt opportunities as they can.
Yeah, joint practices are safer, unless, of course, someone's helmet comes off and someone picks it up and starts to use it as a weapon against other players on the other team. Then it's not quite as safe as you would.
By the way, real quick, does anything highlight better? Jody, you and I talk about this all the time. People think Roger Goodell is this all-powerful, sort of wizard. And I always point out, no. He's the lightning rod for the owners. They got the power.
He's the shield for the shield.
Yeah. And here's an indication where he has no power. He can't because it's not collective. He can't, even if he wanted to suspend Aaron Donald because he can't do it in a joint practice session. He doesn't have the power. So I just want to tell the listeners out there, it's the owners. If you want to yell at Roger Goodell, have at it. I mean, that's his job to be that lightning rod. But understand, he is not the power in this league. Blame the shadow commissioner. That's Jerry Jones, by the way, who's the most powerful of the owners. But I digress. Back to cut down day, Damo. Sorry for my tangent. Let's start with safety, Jaquiski Tartt. How surprised are you that, this is a guy who played a lot of football on a very good defense for a lot of years. The Eagles are running that same scheme now, essentially the Vic Fangio-inspired scheme. So he's got some experience, at least, the terminology's different and all that kind of stuff. But he didn't get one first-team rep all summer. It was amazing. They changed Josiah Scott's position. He jumped him. Reed Blankenship is an undrafted guy from Middle Tennessee State. What happened, do you think, with Jaquiski Tartt?
Made a bad impression right from the start, I guess. Maybe there were mixed feelings about acquiring him in the first place. Although I can't imagine anyone's going to go against Howie if because Howie obviously felt strongly about acquiring him. I mean, he's not the only one. I mean, the safety they got from Seattle and quickly turned around and traded him. I mean, I thought that guy was a natural fit, a guy that could play nickel and safety for them. A couple of minutes later, he's gone. So, there's been some interesting things with several of these guys. You can even look at the quarterbacks with Carson Strong, who never got on the field pretty much, even though they gave him a ton of bonus money for an undrafted free agent, and soured on him. So, I don't know. I mean, safety next to wide receiver, safety seems to be a position they have a great deal of difficulty evaluating.
And they've got evaluation still to make at safety. But since you went there, let me ask you about quarterback. Is Reed Sinnett going to be on this team's practice squad? They're going to try and do better.
I would think they're going to try and do better. He can be on their practice squad, and 2 days later they could replace him. So they'll keep him. If there's no one better by the time the season starts, he'll be on the practice squad. But I would not get a 1-year lease if I were him. Because they can do better. I mean, there's going to be people available that they're going to see as developmental projects that they can put on the practice squad.
There's a number of positions the Eagles can probably get better at when it comes to depth. We just talked about safety. You mentioned quarterback. I look at running back. I look at tight end. A lot of positions. How likely do you think? I mean, the Eagles are going to pick somebody up. They always do something. Howie likes to do that. But, I started to think at the end after watching this depth, Damo, I thought it was going to be tough to get down to 53. Now I think it's a little bit tougher to get up to 53. Am I overreacting to bad preseason football?
Maybe a little bit, but this is a team that I think believes it can go to the Super Bowl this year. So you can't have any weaknesses anywhere because there are going to be injuries, and you've got to have people that you can, they can be the next man up. I don't know what they're thinking at running back right now. I still, you're right. I think I heard you guys talking earlier. I mean, I still think they need a pounder, a guy that can get that 1 yard on 3rd and 1 beyond Jalen. I was a little bit disappointed in Kennedy Brooks in training camp and the off season. I thought he had the potential to be that guy. Maybe someday he will. He'll probably end up on practice squad, like you guys said. But you go back to 2017. I mean, the big acquisition that kind of turned things around for that offense was the guy
Jay Ajayi.
There you go. Picking up him in the right before the season started was huge. And I think this team needs to do the same, because I just don't have a lot of confidence in Gainwell and Sanders to be a short yardage puncher.
Boy, you saw it 3rd and 4th and 1, by the way. 3rd and 4th and 1 with Kenny Gainwell trying to push it up the middle. Yeah. That is the one weird thing to me, that they're using him as a short yardage back. Now, with Jalen Hurts in there,
I was going to say Jalen's not in the game. If Jalen's in the game, Kenny Gainwell's not getting the ball.
Yeah. Right. Well, true. If he is, it's going to be coming off off an option play where the gaps are going to be a lot bigger. So, I mean, those are things that they're taking into consideration maybe when they're thinking about whether they need a bigger back. And plus, you look last year. I mean, Jalen was pretty much a certainty on 3rd and short. So, I mean, I believe they had the highest 3rd and 3 or less percentage success rate.
Which I agree with, by the way. And I said Jalen's their short yardage back. But then you have the people who say, well, what about health? What about safety? He's going to get hurt if you keep using him like that. So it's kind of you can't have it both ways from that standpoint.
Yeah. My feelings, John, have always been that that's part of his game. You don't maybe you could have you take it away from Carson, because Carson could run, but it wasn't as essential as it is with Jalen. And also Jalen has a body that can take a pounding. I mean, that doesn't mean he can't have a freak injury. But he's a fullback. I mean, that's basically what kind of body he has. So he can take some hits that other people can at that position.
Damo, I'm going to ask you to look into your Eagle crystal ball here for a second. I think the three of us agree that at 4 o'clock this afternoon, Jalen Hurts is still going to be a Philadelphia Eagle. Maybe it goes another way. Maybe he's actually traded. Maybe they get nerve enough to cut him. But I think just nod your head. Yes, he's going to be with the Eagles at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Yes. Whether that doesn't mean he'll be here in a week, but I think for now he will be.
All right, so take the next step. He is here in a week, in 2 weeks, in 3 weeks, in 4 weeks. We're sitting in week number 4. Are people going to be saying, they were smart to keep him because he returned a couple of nice punts. He actually made a play. Or will people be saying, Howie, you idiot. Just when you get it wrong as a draft pick, you got to be willing to move on. Why do you cling to these guys afterwards? Which is more likely, Rager surprises us, that he's actually contributing to the team, or that it just looks with every passing week like it's a wasted roster spot that the Eagles kept him?
Well, it's not like they'd be keeping him in place of someone much, much better. I mean, he might end up being the 5th wide receiver with Deion Kane being the 6th. I don't think anybody's going to say, Deion Kane deserves more snaps. Maybe there will be at some point. I don't know. I mean,
I think there already is, Dom.
Jalen Hurts can play. I mean, he's not an awful player. He just is not shown up. I mean, I think he's still capable of, last year they tried using him on bubble screens and those sort of things, and it didn't quite work out. Maybe this year it does. I don't know. Unless you've got a better replacement. I mean, there's no harm in keeping him right now. He's not going to be a distraction in the locker room. He's not costing you a ton of money that you can't afford. So I'm okay with him sitting there.
Yeah, I never got that narrative of Jalen being, and I see it all the time. I still see it as a low effort player or not. I think he's a low confidence player. I think he's lost his confidence, but I never got the thought that he wasn't busting his what. Have you ever gotten that thought around Jalen?
No, I mean, I agree. And it's, it's hard to believe. Well, I guess when you go back and realize the scrutiny and criticism he took early on, maybe even a guy whose father played in this league and played for this team wasn't ready for what happened. He just had the misfortune of being followed by Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, that was bad luck.
And people are never going to let him live that down, which is one of the reasons why I think he'll thrive somewhere else as opposed to here. But no, you're right. I mean, he's always given you 100%. Hasn't been his problem.
And by the way, the Justin Jefferson thing will be revisited heavily week 2 when the Vikings come to town.
You can't get away from it.
Get ready to deal with that again, Mr. Rager. Give me your read on Coach Sirianni. Eagles go 0-3. I know the one loss means nothing. They rested all their starter, didn't play anybody. It became as meaningless as John describes it. Is he going to have this team ready for week 1, or are they going to beat the Detroit Lions because they just have that much more talent to the roster than him? Is this team going to be at 100% ready to go week 1 in Detroit, Domo?
Well, they better be, because I don't think Detroit's a pushover. I mean, Dan Campbell's got them going in that direction.
Jody doesn't believe it.
The Lions stink. They stunk last year. They're going to stink again this year. Dan Campbell is.
They got to get better at some point.
I love them on Hard Knocks too. They're going to be a bad football team, and they're going to be a bad football team.
You know how many close games they lost last year? I mean, that's if you can turn that around. I think Nick's. I like the job he's doing. I like the way he's dealing with this team. They seem to have a lot of confidence. I had some questions about the offseason program. I thought he went too light, and I was worried that was going to be a problem as far as lack of repetitions for people like Jalen and how that would come out. But the joint practices have helped. They're healthy. So right now you got to say that the whole approach worked, because they're one of the healthier teams getting the starting line in the league right now.
Yeah, they are. You do have to give them credit from that standpoint. And I do think people are a little freaked out by Miles's injury, but I keep being told it's just precautionary. Jayvon Hargrave, Greg Ward, who is now finally gone. So Jody's got to close up shop. Although he might be back on the practice squad, who knows? But he's working on an injury settlement, so it won't be for a while. Yeah. Richard Rodgers, another one. Some of these standbys that the Eagles have kept going back and back and back. Is it positive to turn the page on these guys? I mean, you need talent upgrades. So at some point you got to pull the trigger and go with a younger body and trust your personnel people.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what – I mean, they soured on Greg Ward last year. So, it was pretty clear that he wasn't Nick's cup of tea, even though, the influence he had in the locker room and the relationship he had with Jalen. I mean, they brought in Zach Pascal, and that was pretty much the end of Greg Ward's usefulness. So I don't know the severity of this toe injury. I know that if there's any way he could have been out on that field fighting for a last spot, Greg Ward would be. So, a lot of people minimize toe injuries. I mean, they end it. Years, they end seasons. Yeah. So I don't know what the situation is there. My guess is at some point here we'll hear he's going to get surgery after he gets cut. So, but yeah, you got to turn the page on a lot of these guys, and I don't have much of a problem with most of the people they're turning the page on.
Domo, see which side you land on here, because John and I saw it a little differently when we discussed it in the first segment. Tight end. We know Goddard's a starter. We know Stoll's the blocking tight end when they go to two tight end on obvious running downs. And I think Calcaterra looked good enough last week, and I think the team feels strongly enough about him. I don't think they're in play for a wide receiver off the waiver wire at all. I think that they have the three that they're going to have. When in doubt, Rich Rod on the practice squad again. They've been there, done that how many times over the last couple of years. I don't think tight end is something they're going to be able to, or even all that motivated to look to improve. Do you think they're going to be in the market for a tight end if a really good one that fits their system and their needs drops there? Do you think they make a play for one?
I'd be surprised if they did, Jody. You're right. I mean, I like the three they have. Calcaterra needs to learn how to block better, but let's face it. Marty Morningwig likes to say, all you want out of a tight end is one that's going to lose with dignity when he's blocking.
Just get in the way.
There are very few Dallas Goederts out there. There are very few Kittles or Kelseys. Most of these guys can't block a lick. Zach Ertz was never a particularly good blocker, even though he worked hard at it and gave it his best effort. So, I think they'll end, somebody's going to end up on the practice squad in case Stoll goes down, so that they do have a blocking tight end for 12 personnel. But aside from that, I think they see a lot of potential in Calcaterra as a pass catcher. And I think they'll stick with those three.
Grant's interesting to me, Damo, for a number of reasons. And I agree with you guys that the Eagles like Grant Calcaterra. They like his receiving upside. But he's a 6th-round pick. And I'm like, when do you defer to a 6th-round pick like it seems like the Eagles are deferring to a 6th-round pick, who, by the way, missed most of the summer with a hamstring injury, has the concussion issues, which I think are a little bit overblown because he's admitted he probably overreacted. He didn't have a lot of information. But still, very few 6th-round picks come into this league and say, I got a 53-man spot. But it seemed that way with Grant. He didn't even have to be out there, and they were going to default to him. Surprised by that?
A little, but Calcaterra is a 6th-round pick with an asterisk, which is the concussions that basically almost ended his career at Oklahoma. I mean, he was an all Big 12 player as a freshman. Was on his way to probably be a day 1, day 2 pick in the draft before before he had multiple concussions and retired. I think they see the Calcaterra that was before the concussions and believe that's what they have. My concern with and I think they have it as far as the player. My concern is that this is a rough game, and he gets hit a couple more times, and we're back to them, him announcing his retirement at some point. So, you're always worried about that, but I think they're looking at the upside, and that's what they see in him.
Damo, this is kind of a, I don't want to make or break is too tough a term, but a show us what you got year for the defensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. There are a bunch of different narratives the way they can play out. He could be great and he can get a job as a head coach somewhere. He could be bad and they could decide, we got to go in another direction. Or he can have a good, solid year like he did this past year, maybe a little better because they improved the pieces that he has to work with. But he's not either gone or he's not a head coach elsewhere. Out of those three possibilities, which do you think is most likely? JG is still here with the Eagles as their defense coordinator. He's a head coach elsewhere, or the Eagles have gone another direction with their defensive coordinator position.
Well, I mean, he is on the wrong side of the ball for it to be a head coach, but I still think if I had to guess, he'll be a head coach next year somewhere else. I think he's going to be very successful this year with a unit that's got a lot more pieces that are versatile and can be successful, and that he can change the approach he took compared to last year with the whole bend but don't break thing that was driving people crazy. I mean, I don't think we're going to see Jim Johnson. I mean, he's not going to be that kind of guy. But I defended him last year because I just felt he didn't have much and he didn't know what he didn't have. So he was just trying to minimize the damage. This year, he's got people that can play, that he can move around, that he can kind of keep offenses off guard. So I think he's going to be very successful, and he'll end up with a head coaching job.
Since Jody went down the coaching staff wormhole, I want to look at the offensive side of the ball, and I'll ask you, what should the Eagles' offensive philosophy be? Should they be trying to sling it around because they got A.J. Brown and they're going to pay him $25 million a year? Should they lean on what they were successful at last year? You said take advantage of Jalen Hurts' skill set, his traits. Combination of both. What should they do?
I think a combination of both, John. I mean, I don't think they want to sling it around. I don't think Jalen's ready for that. I don't think it's his strong point. But you're going to see a mix of everything this year. RPOs, deep balls to some of these guys when things open up, and a lot of runs. Not as many as last year, but I could see them. I mean, 46% run is pretty heavy in this league. I mean, they passed that by a mile last year, but I mean, I think we could see that this year, like a 54 pass, 46 run, assuming they're successful, assuming that that line is both doing a good job of run blocking and a good job of protecting him. So I think there's going to be a mixture here. They've got so many different. I mean, the guy I think is going to really have a breakout season. Not so much A.J. Brown, and this is Dallas Goedert. I mean, I think he's ready to become the next great tight end in this league. And I think I think he's going to be a huge factor in the red zone this year. I think he's going to be a huge factor on third downs. Plus, what he brings to the run game is something not many tight ends.
I'm with you. I said I did my top Eagles players. I have Dallas, just pure football players, not impact, because obviously it's the quarterback. I had Dallas Goedert number one. He can do everything as a tight end, as you mentioned. Yeah. There's like two of those guys, maybe three left, and he does everything at a high level. He's a great football player. I agree with you there. Sorry, Jody.
You know what?
No problem.
The thing is, you talk about scouting, and they lucked out. They had no idea.
Oh, they had no idea he could block. None. It wasn't asked to block at South Dakota State because he was such a good receiver at that level. They had no idea. Yeah, it was amazing. They got him, and it was like, wow. Yeah.
And I'm with Damo, John. You're talking about his overall game, which you're right is as good as there is in the National Football League. I think he's right there with Kittle, as a matter of fact. But on the producing numbers end, I'm with Damo. He's going like 6th or 7th tight end drafted in fantasy leagues this offseason. I think he should be 2 or 3. I can't believe that they're putting guys ahead of him. That I just don't think is going to be the case. I think the quarterback's going to throw the ball to him a lot this year for the Eagles. All right, Damo. Yesterday I did notice that, and probably because of the Tyrone Smith injury, most betting outlets have now made the Cowboys and the Eagles the co-favorite in the NFC East. I actually had the Eagles slightly ahead of the Cowboys before the Tyron Smith injury, so this just fortifies, for me, the Eagles' position as the favorite in the NFC. If you were doing the handicapping from a wagering perspective, you good with them being right now, even at this time? Should the Eagles be a favorite? Should the Eagles be a big favorite? How do you see the comparison between the top 2 teams in the NFC East?
I'd put the Eagles as the favorite right now. Not a heavy favorite. I think it's going to be a competitive division with them in Dallas, right down into December. But Dallas always finds a way to screw it up.
Usually in the playoffs, though, Dono.
Yeah,
they usually get
this year might be a little bit.
Yeah,
early.
I mean that Tyron Smith injury, and because he's been banged up the past couple years, and when he's not on the field, they're not the same team.
No.
And all of a sudden they got to throw. They have made the move. They're Tyler Smith, their first round pick. They're going to throw him into the deep end of the pool and play left tackle. Oof, that's gonna be ugly. That's gonna be the Jim Schwartz startup cost moment when they watch Tyler Smith. So I think things have tilted towards the Eagles' way. But let's put on our negative hat. If things could go wrong, besides injuries, because injuries can affect anyone, they just affected the Cowboys. There any concerns that say, all right, this team could underachieve because of this?
Besides injuries, yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone still is. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is going to be terrific this year, but I don't think we know for sure. Even with the weapons, even with the protection, even with the second year in the same offense for the first time since high school. Until we see it happen in real time, we're not going to know for sure, which is why these first few games are going to be so important.
Yeah, see, I'm going safety. I really think, and not because Jaquiski Tartt died out on us here. It's because they weren't all that good to Anthony. 0 to 10, 0 being how the hell is this guy still in the league, 10 being Pro Bowl. What kind of season do both of you guys think Anthony Harris is going to have this year for the Eagles?
5. I would go 5.
He's dead 5, isn't he? He's right in the middle. You can't go higher than 5.
He's an average player.
Nobody's stepping up either. I mean, Kayvon Wallace is, probably is on the, could be on the roster bubble here, if not for the fact that he's a 4th round pick. So yeah, I mean, it's. I just think that Gannon can find a way to survive without great safeties. They certainly don't have great safeties, but without it being a liability week in and week out.
But let me ask both you guys, John. I definitely want your answer on this one. If Gannon is so married to the Vic Fangio system of doing things like many other teams in the National Football League, isn't a playmaking safety a big part? Are we banking on Marcus Epps being that guy?
Well, they do like Marcus a lot. You can't get everything you want. Remember, the Eagles wanted Marcus Williams. I mean, they went heavy in on Marcus Williams. They just get outbid. They got outbid. So they knew they needed an upgrade at safety. But, they got upgrades at edge rusher and nose tackle and one technique and Jordan Davis. They got an upgrade at linebacker. You can't get a couple upgrades. You can't get everything you want in one off season. But their actions show that they knew they needed a safety. They were unable to get it. So now you got to cobble it together. And the hope is Marcus Epps can take a big step forward. I think people are starting to take that for granted. I'm a little concerned. I like Marcus, but we haven't seen it. Similar to what you said, Damo. We got to see it first. But he definitely has looked like the best safety on this team. I don't know if that's a positive note. I mean, I would rather have, Jonathan never stops talking about Harrison Smith. Yeah, he would rather have Harrison Smith in his prime. He knows. It's not like he doesn't know. But you can't get everything, right, Dama?
Right. Yeah, you lean on your linebackers a little bit more. You mix things up coverage wise. I think they'll be fine against the run where the safety doesn't need to be as big a factor because of the huge human being they're going to be putting the defensive tackle. I agree.
All right, Damo, you've done your due deference to ex-Eagle coach Deuce Staley and/or Coach Campbell up there in Detroit. I'll be watching Hard Knocks tonight, entertained and interested, but the Lions stink. Give me the reason why the Eagles are going to have a tough time in Detroit week 1, where I just put these two rosters on a scale and it goes like this: Eagles over the Lions. Why don't you see it that way?
It's not that I don't see it that way. I just don't think that we're talking about a pushover here because Detroit wasn't a pushover for anybody last year.
Except
I was going to say, you did see the Eagles-Lions game, right?
Well, okay, the Eagles,
a couple, yeah. But I mean, they're playing in Detroit. They're playing in Detroit.
That's where the Eagles hung 44 on them last year. I'm just saying.
Home opener, though, everybody's excited. I've told Jody that, everybody's excited, optimistic, a little bit different home opener versus 0-8 or whatever the heck they were.
Never bet week 1 because you're going to lose.
Never bet week 1. Jody, you know that. Never bet week 1.
By midway through the third quarter, they'll be saying SOL in the Sol. Better call Sol because it's SOL, same old Lions. Not gonna be a problem.
The Lions, they have some good players. Frank Ragnow might be the best center in football. Panay Sewell.
Whoa. Jason Kelce could be watching right now.
Frank Ragnow.
You just put Frank Ragnow ahead of Jason Kelce as the best center in football.
Frank
really?
Ragnow.
Did you say that, McMullen?
Can we
rewind this tape?
I rewind it. He is the best center in professional football. Was hurt last year.
He's going to be the second best center. He might be the third best center on the field that day if they decide to put Jurgens into the game.
Oh, would you stop? Tell him, Damo. Frank Ragnow is a player, is a dominant player.
I agree.
Was injured last year. Panay Sewell, their first-round pick.
He's a stud.
They have Taylor Decker. Frank Ragnow's far more proven than Panay Sewell. He's already proven he's a top-level player. They got Aiden Hutchinson. When you're as bad as the Lions have been for as long as they've been, you start getting these first-round picks, and you wake up one day and say, wow, we got some pretty good players. At some point, it's got to turn around a little bit. That's my theory.
Playing any of this?
No,
not
well. He's used to the Jets, so same old Jets.
Exactly.
Same old Lions.
The Lions are the Jets of the NFC.
Yeah,
and they don't get out of their own way. It's SOL.
There's something to that.
It's going to happen week 1.
There's something to that too. It's a bad organization, so you got to factor that in.
Yeah,
correct.
P. Damo though, Paul Domowitch, read him, the 33rd team, JAKIBsports.com. 53 man. Any surprises? I'll leave it there with you, Damo. You expect any moment for the fan base?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there aren't many secrets. I mean, we already know Ward's gone. No, I don't expect anybody that's going to knock our socks off and surprise us.
So Jalen Reagor's going to be here, is what you're saying.
Unless the guy, Andre Dillard is still here, and there are teams that need a left tackle. He's had a good camp. I don't know if they're just not getting anything close to the kind of offer they want to hear, or if they just feel that they're going to keep as much depth as they can possibly hang on to.
Yeah, the difference is I think they're actually being offered some decent compensation for Dillard, and they're sitting on that fence. What's he worth versus what do we lose if we move off him? I don't think they have any offers for Reagor. I don't think teams are putting conditional 7th-round picks out there for Reagor. That's why I think it's either he's here or he's cut. I don't think there's any chance that he's traded.
Yeah.
Not getting cut with that cap hit. I'll tell you that. Yeah, he's going to be here. And he's going to be the punt returner, too. So maybe that's the way for the Lions. Maybe a muff punt in week 1.
Domo, great stuff. Always a pleasure whenever you come on board. You know we're going to have you back up in a couple of weeks. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks.